Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds, hanging out with this nerd.
I'm Ted.
If you guys haven't guessed by now, that's right, we're talking about the Curse of Strahd today, and the module that recently just came out.
Before we get into that though, why don't you go on down to the description below, sign up for Nerdarchy, the newsletter. It's a great way to get gaming tips delivered straight to your inbox, as well as learn how to game with Nerdarchy.
So, one of the things I found really interesting about this module compared to all the other ones that have been released by Wizards of the Coast is actually one of the first things that I looked for was who actually did it, who's the publisher, right?
Yeah, and all the other ones, they've got Sasquatch, Green Ronin, Kobold, right here on the back. And you know what's not here? Anything other than D&D and Watts.
Yeah.
The Watts is the ones behind
that, and it was great. They brought in the original creators of Ravenloft,
Tracy and Lyra,
the module. So that was really cool. They kept some of the things like the cutaway maps, which was kind of like iconic for Ravenloft at the time. It was one of those big things that.
And speaking of big things, look how freaking huge this is.
But not only did they keep that same style, that epic cutaway three-dimensional map, but they made it bigger. They made it better. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful.
And if you flip it over, it's a full color
Bavaria
map on the other side.
So also very awesome, great stuff. And I think this is the only module that has the map in the back that you can pull out.
It is. I actually went and checked the other books.
So a couple things we've already covered with you guys in a previous video. I'm just going to touch on them real quick.
Yeah, there's in the Appendix A and B.
Yeah, in the appendixes, there's the one module that you can actually download for free. The other appendix is the background, and trinkets, which you can get from Wizards of the Coast for free, as well as I believe all the handouts that are in here, you can actually download them as well. So if you don't want to take them out of your book,
right? I don't want to tear apart my book to get the letters from Strahd.
Another thing that's worth noting as well, the tarot cards, you can actually buy a deck from Gal Force 9.
Absolutely.
Of these tarot cards, which is pretty
Taroka
cool.
cards.
Taroka, sorry. And also, guys, if you haven't picked this up yet, but you want to, in the description below, I'll put a link to Amazon for it, because we don't believe in paying full price.
The Taroka deck is actually pretty cool. There is rules of how to use a standard deck of cards. It's usually worth the little bit of extra money to actually go and grab the legit deck. It makes people be a little bit more immersed in what's going on when you're flipping the cards and you're seeing, oh, the Dark Lord, the Artifact, the Ghost, the Raven. They're much cooler than be like, oh, well, I drew the King of Hearts, so I drew the Jack of
And
Diamonds.
the thing too is like you're gonna play this adventure. You can play this adventure from levels 1 through 10. Mm-hmm. So like the investment in spending a little extra for the cards isn't bad. If you buy this from Amazon, I think I paid like $31.
$31.02.
$31.02. If you get the cards, they're probably gonna run you like $10 or something. Right. I'm guessing, guys. I don't actually know off the top of my head. But you're gonna get a lot of entertainment value for that.
And there's nothing to say that you couldn't use those Taroka cards
for something else,
for further games.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, if you wanted to just actually keep your campaign in Ravenloft after this is done, and use the Vistani over and over again, sure, why not? You could do different things with them, and then also, like, even if you're not going to use Ravenloft, you could probably incorporate it into other games if you were so inclined. So it doesn't have to end with Ravenloft. Right. Now, one of the things that I love that Wizards of the Coast does in all of their books now is they always put a little disclaimer. I'm a little older than Ted, and his eyes are better than mine. You want to read that disclaimer, because these are all pretty funny.
Is this the one in the very beginning?
Yeah, in the very beginning where it talks about the cover, and it also gives a full picture.
Wizards of the Coast cannot be held liable for any long-term side effects of venturing into the dread realm of Ravenloft, such as lycanthropy, vampirism, a fear of dead things, a fear of living things, an inability to sleep without a nightlight on, and a +5 Holy Avenger under your pillow, and an unsettling suspicion that Strahd is too clever to be so easily defeated, and that this is just all part of some grand scheme of his to extend his power beyond Barovia. You didn't think you could escape unless he wanted you to, did you?
So really cool. They also tell you a little bit about the cover artist on here, and they actually expand the image from the cover.
So the Master Ravenloft is having guests for dinner, and you are invited. Ben Oliver sheds light on the vampire Strahd Vanzarovich, whose dark past is a tale to be told, and whose evil knows no bounds.
Yeah, so that's a nice touch that they've been doing with all the 5e products, and I don't know if they did it with 4th edition or not. But I think it's really nice to give that little bit of extra shout out to the artists that did the cover, especially the ones that are doing such an amazing job.
Oh, absolutely. Now, as Dave says, he's a little bit older than I am, and he's just a little bit. But he has a lot more experience with Ravenloft than I do. Other than a campaign 20 some odd years ago, I didn't spend a lot of time in Ravenloft, and the time I did spend in Ravenloft, it didn't truly fit the Ravenloft feel, because we were a bunch of teenagers, mucking around with D&D.
Well, in all fairness, as a teenager, I ran through the original Ravenloft adventure, and it wasn't our good DM. It was one of the other ones. Come on, guys, you know how it is. You have the good DM and then the other guys that give him a break.
My DM for being a teenager was good. It's just he was not treating the true gothic horror that Ravenloft is supposed to be. So I never truly experienced that, and I never had a draw to Ravenloft that some of the other gamers that we know have. So when I read the foreword, Ravenloft Revisited, I actually learned that Tracy and Laura Hickman created Ravenloft, and specifically Strahd Vanzarovich, because that they were playing a game back in 1978. And as one random monster in a random dungeon, they came across the vampire, and they're like, well, why on earth is there a vampire
just chilling in the hallway?
Just chilling in the hallway around with orcs and oozes and all these other things. It doesn't make sense.
You're around the corner, and there's this guy, dressed all gothy, leaning up against the wall with his legs crossed. Maybe he's got a cigarette in his mouth and looks up as you come around the corner. Sup?
so like, I found that amusing, and there's times that, as even as an experienced DM, there's times that I call it a question of like, well, why did I make that choice? And the hobby itself has grown because of questions like that. Well, why was this here, or how does this all fit? And there's sometimes those things that don't make sense are there for a reason, and the DM has done work, and it's up to you to figure it out. Other times, DMs just don't care, and they put things together because that's what they want to throw at their party. Well, in this particular instance, they encountered a vampire, and they thought it was hogwash. So, Strahd Vanzarovich was born.
Thank God. So, one of the things that they've done with this is really cool, and it has areas by level, right? So, basically, if you're adventuring in a certain area, it's set up for a certain party level. Now, that being said, Ravenloft is very sandboxy. You can pretty much go where you want. There's some areas you shouldn't be at certain levels, but that's great because that's perfect. Like, you go there and get your ass handed to you and run away and come back later and triumph, hopefully, if you survive.
Hopefully.
But, it makes it more interesting, more interactive, more living, breathing. The tarot deck we discussed actually determines, like, how you're going to win. Win against Strahd in the end, where you're going to encounter him, what you're going to need,
where you're supposed to encounter him.
Yeah,
because if you actually read, Strahd can be anywhere. He's on every single random encounter chart, and I love how Strahd is presented in this book. It really is amazing, and it's actually the Strahd section in the monster section is my favorite part of the book, because I love when it tells you how to properly portray a monster or a villain or whatever have you. And there's a section in here that's just called Strahd's Tactics, and it tells you this is what you have to do, because Strahd is not going to make a poor choice. If you look, he has been a vampire for almost 400 years. He is not going to just be like, I'm willy-nilly with my decisions.
Yeah, he's not a chump, and he was pretty impressive before he became a vampire.
Right.
So yeah, this book does a really good job of explaining to you what horror is, how to use tactics and tropes from horror to really convey that to your players and set the mood. In addition, like Ted said, it tells you how to use the NPCs and the monsters and fills them out.
Yeah, in the Marks of Horror, there's bullet-pointed lists that tell you how to properly convey the emotions and the feelings that you need your players to be able to understand to really have the feel of being in Ravenloft. And it's got foreshadowing, age, light, personification, detail, humor, and all of those need to be involved in your story. And if not, then you're doing something wrong.
Right, yeah, and like each of those sections is then but has a couple bullet points underneath of it to kind of flush it out even more. So the sections, bullet points of all the things Ted just said, and that's under Marks of Horror. Going forward, one of the things that I really enjoyed about it is they present to you a handful of characters that would be NPCs, and in most in most other settings they would be generic, except for they're like, this dude was kind of a bully and a jerk, and he was born with a defect of only having one arm, until one day he woke up and there was a demon arm that he could throw flames from, and now he hits really hard. They took which would be kind of like a boring NPC, and they just made one little tweak.
Right.
There's two NPCs where they really do this with, and it's really interesting. With that one, and then another one, it's a dusk elf, where basically he's committed so many awful acts for Strahd and his family that those that are near him just can hear this choir of the damned that are constantly crying out.
I gotta read this. Any creature within 10 feet of Rahadin that isn't protected by a mind blank spell. That's very specific. Hears in its mind the screams of the thousands of people Rahadin has killed. As a bonus action, Rahadin can force all creatures that can hear the screams to make a DC 16 Wisdom saving throw. Each creature takes 16, that's 3d10 psychic damage on a failed save, or half as much damage on a successful one. That's just amazing.
Then there's another monster in there that is basically a murder puppet. And it's a construct, and it's really weak as hell, but it has a cool story to it, and I'm not going to go super specific with everything, just because I know some of you guys are going to want to play through this.
Right.
They also introduce back into the game mongrel folk.
Right.
But they totally changed their kind of their
story,
their background story, and how they came about, and totally gave them this Lovecraftian, Dean Koontz kind of feel to them.
They gave a Ravenloft feel to how these things are there, and I was very appreciative to have these. I feel that Mongrel folk are very, very cool. I myself would love to assemble Mongrel folk as a full PC race. I actually did an article on it way back when for 5e before we had this kind of thing. But it's a definitely Ravenloft feel. Each campaign world could have something. Well, where did these come from? And be uniquely different.
Yeah, because Mongrel folk used to just be a lot of inbreeding with different races, and it just created this race unto themselves of freaks.
Right.
So they changed that up. That was kind of cool. Throughout this whole book, I think you're going to find a lot of really cool art.
I mean, just when you actually get to into the mists, you have a picture of Strahd, and just this one full page, full color art of Strahd just sitting there with a goblet. It's really flipping amazing.
We've got. We've got your standard kind of weak spellcaster witch, which I actually like that they put that in there, because it's something that would be fun and useful at lower levels or higher levels, as making them basically the go-to minion. So that's kind of fun and cool.
Yeah, and I enjoy the monster write-ups, because as opposed to just this is where that monster comes from. A lot of the monsters that are the quote-unquote monster blocks, they're specific NPCs that exist in the Ravenloft world. and like, you get a little bit of history for each one. So here's a cool looking hag, because you know, Ravenloft, there's got to be hags.
Yeah, well, that's just it. They they really did create a lot of rich details and story elements that tie to Strahd and the lands. There's like 2 different villages in here that they flush out for you with full of NPCs for you to insert. So like you're going to get a lot of good gameplay out of this. This is definitely a fun module. Like I'm not really into running modules. Our group doesn't really run modules, but this is one that I would actually consider. Mm-hmm. I don't know. In a nutshell, that's just like our brief overview. There's tons of locations in here. Very sandboxy. They put in all the right stuff to give you the Ravenloft feel, in my opinion. They did everything right by going back to their original writers and bringing them in on the project. I have nothing but good things to say about this. This is actually the first module that I've purchased other than the starter set for 5th edition. Ted has them all now. I'd like Pokemon.
Well, I mean, I want to support the products. I want to be able to review the information that they're putting out there, and really, if we're going to talk about D&D, I want to buy the things that Watts is putting out, and there's always new monster stat blocks. There's magic items. Sometimes there's player options that are put in these books.
I mean, you can lift the maps right out of here and use them for other things.
And you can do that with just about anything. You can lift the maps anytime you have a
encounters, hazards,
charts. There's always things that can be extracted if you don't want to run the module as is. You can lift NPCs. Every little element can be just lifted up and deposited somewhere else. What's to say that the actual quote-unquote Mists of Ravenloft isn't just like a section of your world, and there is something that is just so evil about this section of your world that's where Ravenloft is, and people wander through the mists and they find themselves in Ravenloft, or this section of your world, and they aren't able to find their way out easily, so people have just lived there. It's your world. You can do what you want with it.
Ooh, here's another. I'll do some quick flip throwing for you guys, so you check out some of the artwork and the maps and stuff in here. Like I said, I'm very happy with this product. I'm glad I got it. There's tons of stuff to cherry pick in here. It's some of the best art I feel like that Watts has put out. It's very consistent, and early on that has always been one of our gripes with the art, the inconsistency. But in this book, it's very consistent. Everything has the right tone, the right feel. There's a lot of really good maps in here. Great details, and if you want to run a module, this is one to run for sure. So, with that, this is just really an overview of the book. We've only had it for a few days and haven't fully read it, but what we have read, we've enjoyed very much so far. If you want to run a horror adventure, I would say run this one.
Absolutely. So what do you guys think? Have you picked up this book yet and poured through it? Put your comments and thoughts down below. While you're at it, like, share, even subscribe.
You can hang out with us over at nerdarchy.com.
So until next time, stay nerdy. Than D&D and Watts.
Yeah.
The Watts is the ones behind
that, and it was great. They brought in the original creators of Ravenloft,
Tracy and Lyra,
the module. So that was really cool. They kept some of the things like the cutaway maps, which was kind of like iconic for Ravenloft at the time. It was one of those big things that.
And speaking of big things, look how freaking huge this is.
But not only did they. Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds, hanging out with this nerd.
I'm Ted.
If you guys haven't guessed by now, that's right, we're talking about the Curse of Strahd today. And the module that recently just came out.
Before we get into that, though, why don't you go on down to the description below, sign up for Nerdarchy.
A couple things that we've already covered with you guys in a previous video. I'm just going to touch on them real quick.
Yeah, there's in the Appendix A and B.
Yeah, in the appendixes, there's the one module that you can actually download for free. The other appendix is the background, and trinkets, which you can get from Wizards of the Coast for free, as well as, I believe, all the hand. Not only did they, keep that same style, that epic, cutaway 3-dimensional map, but they made it bigger. They made it better. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful.
And if you flip it over, it's a full color
Bavaria
map on the other side.
So also very awesome, great stuff. And I think this is the only module that has the map in the back that you can pull out.
It is. I actually went and checked the other box.
So
the newsletter, it's a great way to get gaming tips delivered straight to your inbox, as well as learn how to game with Nerdarchy.
So one of the things I found really interesting about this module compared to all the other ones that have been released by Wizards of the Coast is actually one of the first things that I looked for was who actually did it, who's the publisher, right?
Yeah, and all the other ones, they've got Sasquatch, Green Ronin, Kobold, right here on the back. And you know what's not here? Anything other